And with that, I'm going to go right into introducing our first two presenters today. Annalise Lederer is the Senior Policy Counsel, and Andrew Kushner is the Senior Policy Counsel for Center for Responsible Lending, and they're going to highlight their recently released report on solar scams. So, Annalise and Andrew, please take it away.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the opportunity to talk. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'll introduce myself once again. I'm Andrew Kushner, Senior Policy Counsel at CRL. For those of you not familiar with our organization, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan research and advocacy organization that advocate for consumers on a variety of lending issues. And we are, as I think Bruce mentioned at the top of the show, we're a subsidiary or an affiliate of Self-Help Credit Union. And sort of do the policy work for that CDFI lender. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk with you all about solar financing issues. We sort of got into this work in the last year or two because my organization, CRL, has been around since 2002. And one thing that immediately struck us about these solar loans that we were seeing appear on the market, in the last couple of years, is that they looked very similar to the types of predatory practices that occurred, in the early 2000s, and then, indeed caused the Great Recession around mortgage lending. Obviously, this is a market vastly, vastly smaller than the mortgage market was back then. So this is not the same kind of existential threat to our economy overall, but you're seeing the same types of predatory behavior that were really ensnaring borrowers back then. So this first slide here really summarizes the similarities between the things that basically that marked that earlier period, that the Dodd-Frank Act, 2010, were attempting to stamp out, basically. So door-to-door salespeople using pushy tactics, not underwriting their loans for ability to repay, not verifying income, variable interest rates, and we all know how that turned out for consumers, and we're seeing similar harms today. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we put out a report earlier this year, I think in June or July, in the summer. And I know there's a lot of content on this slide, as well as the last one, the next one as well. These are just sort of preview slides that will give you a sense of what we're going to talk about. So please don't feel like you need to sort of understand all of this. This is just a preview of what is to come. We put out a report, which we'll drop a link in the chat, that looked at a variety of different ways in which consumers are harmed in these transactions, put them into separate buckets. Harms relating to sales practices. That's sort of like the conduct of the door-to-door salesperson. Harms related to unscrupulous installers. There's a big issue of installers, basically pocketing the money from a lender and then not even finishing the project. So you have a homeowner that has a half-installed solar system on their roof that doesn't even produce any energy. There are a bunch of harms related to the clauses in a contract. So as some of you may know, or at least have heard about, these door-to-door salespeople typically present people with an iPad and ask them to, sign on the spot. And they may even scroll through the fine print for the homeowner without even letting them read it. And that's a sort of a misleading sales practice issue, but with the actual terms that appear in the contract can be a big source of harm. And then there's, finally like a catch-all category of other things we've seen in the marketplace. So broad overview, we're going to go through several of these categories and really talk in depth about what consumers are seeing and what you all should be looking out for. Next slide, please. So we've for this audience, we decided to sort of distill or to take another look at kind of making a list of the main issues that you all should be looking out for if clients of yours or if people you know are considering solar panels on their roof, individual rooftop solar, or visited by salespeople in these transactions. And once again, each of these little bullet points will get its own slide later in the presentation. So this is something you all need to memorize or understand at this point. But these are just a list of the things that we're going to be talking about on today's call and on today's webinar. Why don't we go to the next slide? So I'm going to start talking about this first major issue, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Allie. One really striking abuse that we've seen in this industry is what is called a hidden dealer fee. So what this means essentially, and I'll explain this over a couple slides because it's somewhat complicated, is that lenders and installers inflate the cost of solar loans and mislead borrowers with stated APRs that are too good to be true by including in the loan principal a dealer fee that is effectively a disguised finance charge. And I guess I should mention, the way that these entities tend to operate. You've got several prominent solar lenders. You may have heard of some of these companies: Solar Mosaic, Good Leap, are a couple of the prominent ones. They have relationships with solar sales entities that are often installers at the same time. So like Solar Titan is a big one. They have a pre-existing contractual relationship. So, a salesperson may come to the door of a homeowner. It's someone who works for Solar Titan, and they already have a pre-existing relationship with, let's say, Good Leap, the lender. And so when they present an iPad, with the deal to a homeowner, it's sort of like baked into one transaction where you have the lender already lined up, you have the installer already lined up, and sort of this dealer fee is a sort of hidden back room kind of relationship between the lender and the installer, if that makes any sense. So I've put on the screen there an example of a TILA disclosure statement. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this. Yeah, you certainly don't need to look at this in full detail. What I just want to highlight, so this is a real TILA disclosure from a loan that was actually taken out by a consumer. You'll look at the APR, 1.98%. You're thinking, wow, like that's an incredible deal. In fact, in these current times when you can open up a high yield savings account, and get 4%, you might be thinking, this is such a good deal. I'm going to make money on this basically because I'm borrowing so cheaply that this is basically free money, right? And this is where the misleading part comes in. So let's go to the next slide. So what you're not being told is that the amount that you are borrowing in many cases is much more than the system cost to install, right? And that's why the interest rate can be so low. So here's an example. We don't know, in the exact loan that I just put on the screen what was going on, but here's what may likely have been going on. So you had a loan for $33,000 at an interest rate of 1.98%. The system may only have cost $24,000 to install, and the difference, roughly $9,000, is just kept by the lender. Like they pass $24,000 onto Solar Titan that does the installation. They keep the other $9,000, and that obviously continues to accrue interest over time. And so that's their profit, right? And that's how they can make money doing this, offering loans at a shockingly low interest rate of 1.98%. And I did a little quick calculation of this scenario. The real APR, if you include the $9,000 as part of the finance charge, it turns out to be about 5%. So, this is not some super duper high interest loan, even with that $9,000 included, but it is substantially more expensive than is being disclosed to the consumer, right? And can we go to the next slide? So don't look at this closely. This is an example of a rate sheet. We're going to zoom in on the next slide. This is a rate sheet of the loans offered by a certain lender, and we're going to zoom in. You're going to see sort of how these dealer fees work, basically. So next slide. So I've zoomed in on this slide on the very top section of that document and on the very bottom section. So what you see I've circled here in red is, this really attractive 0.99% interest rate, right? To get that, you're basically your borrower is basically going to pay a $8,000 or $9,000 fee that they're not going to be told about to get that interest rate, right? That's just going to increase the cost of the system that they purchase. And then, to get a true interest rate, 7, 8%, or 8 or 9%, excuse me, there's no dealer fee, but the interest rate is substantially higher. And many consumers would think very differently, I think, about whether to enter into this transaction if they're told, what the true interest rate was. And happy to talk. I was going to say, yeah, this is great. Next slide's perfect. I was going to say, I'm happy to go into a lot of detail about the Truth in Lending Act and why lenders think they don't need to disclose this information. If that's of interest, there's a whole big legal argument about that that's shown up in some litigation. But then happy to touch on that later if there's interest. So what can you do, or what can your clients do about this, right? You should always ask, is this, is the amount that I'm borrowing what the system costs to install? And it's tricky because, and this is sort of why the relationship between the lender and the borrower, the lender and the installer can be so problematic. Many of the lenders actually have contract clauses with the installation company that says you're not allowed to disclose the lower cash price. They're hiding, they're affirmatively requiring their salespeople to hide that information. So it might be difficult to get that information. If it is at all difficult, or if they seem cagey about disclosing what the system actually costs to install, I would say that is a big red flag, and you should be really wary of entering into that transaction. The other thing to do here, I think, is not to be overly focused on the APR that is disclosed in the TILA document, right? That 1.98% that just looks like free money, basically. It really pays to shop around. It really pays to get quotes from installers that don't partner with lenders, right? See what it costs to put this solar on the rooftop, and then shop around for a loan independently. It may be that a credit union in your area is offering loans at 3 or 4%, which is higher, right? But if you're borrowing substantially less money, that's going to be a better deal overall for the borrower in the end. But it's obvious that what the industry is trying to do is get people really excited about that super low APR number that is basically dishonest and too good to be true. And I will turn it over at this point to my colleague Allie.
Next slide, please. I have one. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk about this. One of the issues we've been seeing is the tax credit. So during the sales pitch, the salesperson is going to talk about how you're able to save money. And under the Inflation Reduction Act, there is a 30% tax credit on the cost of the system. So how this tax credit works is that it's actually a non-refundable tax credit. So it only lowers the tax liability if you have a tax liability. So if you pay $20,000 for solar panels and you receive a 30% credit, then that means you will get $6,000 as a credit. So if your tax liability is $12,000, the $6,000 lowers your tax liability now to $6,000. If your tax liability was $3,500, your new tax liability is $0. under the Inflation Reduction Act, you can actually use that remainder, the 2,500, and it can be saved for a future year to like the next year, the following tax year, to lower that up until 2035. And then, but if you have a zero tax liability because you're low income, then this credit doesn't you don't get any value from the credit. So you're still responsible for 100% of the cost of the system. And so salespeople don't know if somebody is low income. They don't know how much they're going to qualify for. And so they're just telling you that you're going to get this. And so if you can go to the next slide, please. One of the things that happens is that the loan finance is structured on the assumption that you're going to qualify for this amount. And then you're going to take this tax credit, the $6,000, and you're going to use it to lower down the cost of the of your monthly payments. So again, if we're looking at that same, similar loan structure, 25 years, the amount borrowed by the borrower is $33,427. The interest rate is 1.98, and then the finance charge is just under $10,000. And if you paid monthly, it's going to come out to be $42,000. So the loan finance structure is you've got two options. For the first 18 months, both options allow you to only pay interest. The assumption is that during that 18 months, you will get your money because you have filed your taxes, and that somehow you're going to have $6,000 in cash in your hands, which again, it just brings down your liability, your tax liability by that amount. It does not give you cash. So once you hit zero, you don't get anything back. And then you're supposed to pay that money to the finance company by the target date of the 18 months. If you don't, then your payments increase. So in both situations, in both option one, option two, the monthly payments do increase. The amount is different. So if you pay the target balance by month 18 in option one, then for months 19 to 30, you're paying $103. If you don't pay, then you'll be paying from 19 to 299, $148 a month. So that is, a $45 increase on this specific loan. But this is one of the big sales pitches, that you're going to save money, and everyone hears that and assumes that it means I'm going to have $6,000 cash. And so you don't. You need to have that money somehow, somewhere, but also the fact is that if you're low income, it's not going to help you at all. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I think this one's me. So this is another big area where we see consumers get tripped up. In addition to basically being told, the government will give you 30%, what Ali was just talking about, the government will pay for 30% of your solar panel. What consumers are often told is, basic some version of, hey, you're never going to pay another utility bill again. The system will pay for itself, or, over the 25, as you may have seen in the TILA document I put up earlier, these are very long-term loans, 25 years, something like that, on average, 25 years. Over the course of the 25 years that you own the system, it'll pay for itself in 8 years, and you'll pocket, several $1,000s or, $10,000 by the end of the term, basically. It's important to think about the ways that the factors that go into that calculation and how easily they can be manipulated. So, sometimes I think salespeople just make kind of general statements, right? Like you'll never pay a utility bill again, or you're going to save thousands of dollars. But sometimes they do put in front of consumers, what purport to be really specific calculations, like this will save you $180 a year, every year that you have the system. And again, it's important to think about what goes into those calculations. So the first is, how much power is the system going to provide? And that really depends on, the location, the number of the panels, the location, how much shading that they receive, and then also, when consumers use energy. In many places in the country, I'm out here in Oakland, California, we have this. You have variable energy rates depending on what type of day you're using energy, and most expensive in the evening. And if if the consumer uses a lot of energy, different times earlier in the day, it may really impact the generation amount in their savings. And then the other thing that goes into these calculations, if you think about how long term these loans are, over 25 years, is how are they? You have to think, how are they estimating increases in future energy costs? There's actually not a lot of consensus among economists about where energy costs are going to go over the next 25 years. That makes a lot of sense. It's really uncertain where we're going to be. I think over the last 20 years, I think with a notable blip over the last couple of years, before that, it's tended to average something like 3% a year, over the country as a whole. But the salesperson might be assuming in their calculations that energy prices are going to increase 5% every year over the next 25 years. And if you assume that, which is kind of off base historically, you can put a savings number in front of the consumer, right? That's totally inflated because it assumes they're going to be paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars more in energy costs in 20 years than they really will in reality. Allie will touch on this more in a little bit later, but the contracts that consumers sign with these lenders and installers have clauses in them that disclaim all of those, disclaim the accuracy of all of those estimates, which basically means you can't sue, or it's a hard road to sue the lender or the installer if the savings are nothing like what you were promised, right? And so it's just important to take all of those estimates with a significant grain of salt. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Red zone. So this is an area where the utility company has determined that there are already too many solar panels connected to the grid, and that the grid is unable to support any new panels to be connected. So you have situations here where the consumer doesn't realize they're unable to connect, and yet they're sold a product that isn't workable. This is not determined by any government agency. It's determined by a utility party, which is kind of connected to a government agency. Some utility companies are better at putting out maps of where these red zones are. Some utility companies are not. So really, reminding the consumer that they need to check and make sure that this is not a red zone, because then the seller has no incentive to tell you that. They are usually 100% commission paid, and so they just are looking to make a sale. Next slide, please. Right to rescind laws and the FTC cooling laws that deal with door-to-door salespeople. There are differences between the right to rescind laws between the state and the FTC federal law. Under FTC, there's 3 days that a person who has a salesperson come to them, they can think about it and rescind without any economic effect. There have been a lot of situations where the companies pretend that you didn't call within time. So, making sure that that can be documented if you've got clients coming to you. Also making sure that they fulfill the requirements, like there's a second piece of paper that is the right to rescind, and so both pieces are there. And as well as knowing in your own individual state, like how long is this? Some states have 7 days, some states have 5 days. So knowing what is that time period that the consumer can rescind. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, is what Andrew just mentioned, which was the provisions to disclaim the sales representations. So that these are, again, provisions within a sales contract. So the consumer is going to sign 2 contracts. They're going to sign a sales contract with the installer. They're going to sign a finance contract with the financial institution. So in a sales contract, it talks about the idea that anything that's said in the sales pitch, they cannot be held responsible for. So that they can make outrageous claims about how much you're going to save, but this is not enforceable against them. And then even though they say you're going to save money and you're going to make money back, which helps with your savings because you can sell money to the grid, that's not true. Also depend too with some of the stuff about your output, what time of the day you're using your electricity. So solar only makes electricity during the day, and anything you don't use during the day can be sold, depending on the utility company, back to the grid, and there's different prices depending on different areas. one of the things is that if you use more electricity at night, you're going to end up taking more usage from the grid, and that's going to be a cost for you. So sometimes they'll try to upsell you on a battery. Batteries, and also the presumption that if you lose power, that you're going to, if the grid fault goes down, then you will still have power. If you do not have a battery, then that's not true. You are going to go down with everybody else and have no power because your solar panels can't work. So there are pluses to doing a battery, but a battery costs an extra $10,000 minimum. So these are all part of this like information that's not fully given in the right way. So the consumer is not really able to make an educated decision. Next slide. So contracts are the same language as the sales pitch. In certain states like Utah, if the sales pitch is done in a different language, the contract must be also in that language. So again, these are some of the stuff that I'm sure as housing counselors, when you sit there and help your clients with the budgeting, you are seeing as well and knowing, is this correct or not? So again, just to be aware that the contract, depending on the state law, because there's no federal requirement for this, will be in the correct language as needed so that the consumer can better understand what they're agreeing to. Next slide, please. Forgery of signatures. There are a lot of cases, there's a large number of cases about dealing with the forgery of the signature. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One, because it makes the contract invalid. And those are when they what we've been seeing in the court cases and under the fact patterns there is that the person doesn't have an email address. So the salesperson makes up an email address. And then this is usually with older clients. And then what they do is the amount of time the person's given to really examine the documents is like 3 seconds before they sign, because DocuSign does a point they keep time stamping everything. And then what is important about the forgery is, let's say you're somebody like an elder consumer, and they're having cases where they've done this with dementia, consumers who've got dementia that come to their house and they force them to sign on to these things where they don't understand what they're signing for. They don't think they're actually signing a contract. They're just signing someone to look at the roof. And what ends up happening is that if thought properly, it stops the arbitration clause because there's no enforceable contract. So you can go to court and deal with this and get the loan, disappear. But usually these contracts also have an arbitration clause, which means that everything has to be arbitrated and you cannot go to court. So if it is determined through a court that the signature is forgery, then the arbitration clause is not enforceable. Next slide, please. Fair lending. So solar panels are covered under the Fair Lending Law of ECOA, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. And some of the things is, I know you guys take fair lending classes. One of the things that you could be looking at for is reverse redlining. So are we seeing more loans, more potentially predatory loans in minority neighborhoods? Are we also seeing higher interest rates to members of protected class? And also overselling. So, you only need one battery, let's say, but they're pushing you to get 2 batteries, or they're telling you to get, 10 more panels than you really need. So it's overselling, which doesn't give you any more energy, again, to members of protected classes. So, keep your eyes open for these. You can file this with the CFPB, a complaint on what you're seeing. In July, after we put out our paper, the CFPB came out with an issue spotlight about solar scams. So it is something that's on the radar, and they're fairly, the enforcement people are looking at it, the fair lending team are looking at it. So again, if you think that something's happening, file a complaint with your client. There's nothing, doesn't hurt. Next slide, please. Elder abuse. So there's no federal elder financial abuse laws, but a lot of states do. And so really to be able to look out for this, there are a lot of anecdotal evidence as well as court case that talk about they're going really to people who are elderly and trying to do this because they're hoping to just be able to speak over their heads and just get them to sign up. There are a lot of anecdotal evidence of consumers with dementia who were signing 25-year loans and then 4 months later passing away. And yet now their family is stuck with this loan. So a lot of elderly. So if you see an elderly consumer coming in about it, I would, it's not a red alert, but it's just a keep your watch and make sure that there isn't some financial abuse happening here. And if it is, file a complaint with the state, financial departments. Next slide. Okay, so UCC liens. This becomes a really big issue. So the loans we're talking about are residential loans, so on the individual homes, but these are not PACE loans. PACE loan has to do with it is connected to your taxes, and a PACE loan has first priority in the line of succession if the house goes into foreclosure. And so Freddie and Fannie are not allowed to buy a mortgage that has a PACE loan on it. Freddie and Fannie can buy a mortgage that has a UCC lien on the solar panels. So in the sales contract, in the financing contract, they will talk about that this is a UCC lien on the panels themselves. The issue is that in some jurisdictions, the UCC lien can be so broad that it covers the whole house. Even in those situations, Freddie requires that this UCC lien is subordinate to their lien. And so that has to be done. Now, what you're getting is what is the real law versus what is perception of reality. And so you're finding an issue that under the perception, it takes a lot longer to as a broker to work with a house with solar loans on it, solar panels on it. And so they may not want to do it because they don't want to deal with ensuring that it is subordinate. One of the other things that some of the finance companies say that for $200, they, at your request, but it's actually ultimately their decision as they've worded it, they can and possibly will, but it's not a guarantee, lift the lien for a period of time. So let's say you're refinancing and then lower the lien, put the lien back on the house for that $200. So it's costing you again more money to be able to have the solar panels. So you run into the issue of the perception again by the brokers who are unwilling to work with you or with the buyer. And then you also have the issue that it's going to cost an extra $200 to lift that lien to be able to get a refi. So it's supposed to be only on the panels, but it becomes an issue in certain jurisdictions where it can be everywhere and the whole property. Next slide. And then our last slide has to do with additional TILA issues. So you're required to provide a TILA disclosure, a Truth in Lending Act disclosure, which has a ceiling. And the ceiling is $69,500. If the loan is for higher, so let's say it's for $75,000, $100,000, which there are loans for that, they're not required to provide a TILA. So that can also become a problem because you don't really know as much about like what is the dealer fee or what's that. So that becomes its own issue. So just kind of be aware that, don't be surprised if you don't see it, but it does make it harder for you to kind of help the consumer really navigate through this. And that is the end of our presentation. I'm going to turn back to Ellie and she can put their seatbelt because I think we'll do questions afterwards.
And I'll just say, sorry, really quickly. Now I'll put my email address. Usually I have a slide with our email addresses. We forgot to do that this time. So I'll put my email address in the chat if anyone wants to follow up offline. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. I do want to ask one really quick question. I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you all. So explain why low-income people aren't eligible for the $6,000 tax credit.
Oh, that's easy. So the first time you ever see this tax credit is back in 2006, and it was never intended for low income. It was always intended for higher income. And it was, from the beginning, it's always been a non-refundable tax credit. So to make it inclusive to low and moderate income people, it needs to be changed in the tax code from non-refundable to refundable, which would mean that once you hit the zero number, so let's say you had a tax liability of $1,000 and you paid $6,000 for this. So it would subtract $1,000 from that $6,000, and now you have $5,000, and that would come back to you as cash as a refund. But because it's not refundable, once you hit zero, that's it, it's done.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we're going to move to our next presenter, and that is Catherine Peoples. She's the Executive Director of HPP Cares, and she's going to talk about this very specific multitasker scams that are related to ADUs in California. So Catherine, take it away.
Wonderful. I hope everyone can hear me clearly.
Yep,
Unfortunately,
you.
due to technology, I'm going to leave my camera off because I think it causes the video feed to deteriorate. So my apologies. With that said, Catherine Peoples, Executive Director of HPP Cares, and we're going to be covering multitasker victims. These are victims within Southern California of a home improvement solar finance scam when it comes to building an ADU. Next slide, please. HPP Cares is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization, and we are supporting all services from homeownership to ADUs. Our organization has taken on a large opportunity for our entire state with building and assisting consumers with the ADU grant for the state of California. Next slide, please. For many of you that are not aware of what an ADU can consist of a smaller unit that is carved out with an existing parcel, or it could be a detached unit like you see here in the image. Within the state of California and many states, we have a housing crisis. And so with our state, a grant was provided for consumers to be able to cover their pre-development costs. And I'm just giving you a little history on how we got into this back in 2021. With that said, our organization was allowed to administer a $40,000 grant to support consumers who were building ADUs with pre-development expenses, i.e. that could be architectural plans, that could be utility trenching, which is associated with converting a garage or building an ADU, all the initial costs associated with building an ADU. Our organization stepped in and we've done outreach, we did intake, we underwrote the grant, and then we awarded them. And our organization is currently managing a performance fund or a construction escrow for $150 million within the state of California. We are actively building 3,000 ADUs currently throughout the state in every county. So kind of our organization has become kind of the ADU go-to for the state. And that's where we started to see some of the predatory activities that were rearing their head, shall I say, as we have been doing this over the course of the last 3 years. Can you go to the next slide, please? So some of the key points with regards to the multitasker scam. There were 164 victims in total. It's well into $48 million of loss for those households, $48 million worth of loss for those households. The average cost or charge that these families were impacted with was well into $300,000 per household, if not more. Many of the families that were impacted by this scam had Mosaic, Good Leap, Dividend, and Sunlight as their financing vehicle. And many families have been left with quite financial burdens. We have, as of today, been very successful in getting a lot of the loans that the consumers had through Mosaic rescinded, and we are in process of working with Good Leap, Dividend, and Sunlit. So now let's talk about the actual scam. You can go to the next slide. So this is the Garrett family, the Garrett Lamb family. They were interested in building an ADU for their mother-in-law who has Alzheimer's. It made sense financially because they did not want to put her into any type of assisted living because the cost annually for assisted living would pretty much be the same cost to build an ADU, anywhere from $191,000 and up. So it made sense to pursue this initiative of building an ADU. So they reached out to Multitasker, who did quite a bit of social media advertising, TikTok, Instagram. They did a beautiful job at building that clientele using social media. They reached out to Multitasker. When they met with Multitasker, they were told, yes, we can build an ADU, we can put it right here, we can get it done within the next 3 to 6 months. But the largest selling point, or the strongest selling point that Multitasker was selling, is regardless, you will not have any payment to any of the financing companies we use for an entire year. Okay. So the consumers were all over that because they're thinking to themselves, okay, it'll take 6 to 8 months for me to get an ADU built with the appropriate solar panels and things of that nature, and I won't have to drop a dime at all. So it was extremely appealing to consumers. So they went ahead and signed on the dotted line. They continued to sign on the dotted line to the tune of 6 to 7 loans through Mosaic as the lending institution. Each time that they signed the documentation with Mosaic or through the Multitasker signing system, they would sign into a CRM system. Unbeknownst to them, Multitasker created an email address for them. So each time they were signing on it, they were not actually using their own email. They were using a fabricated email address. So they were never getting confirmation or what they actually signed. It stayed within the system and, as you can imagine, was deleted once the signature portion was completed. On the back end, the employees of Multitasker were notifying Mosaic, as well as some of the other financial institutions for the other victims, that the projects were completed. And so you start to think to yourself, well, wait a minute, there is no ADU financing. Exactly. Multitasker figured out how to use solar home loan improvement products for solar financing, for water heaters, for the likes through these vendors, Mosaic, Dividend, and Goodleap, and were able to figure out how to pull out the financing from those vehicles and actually, lie to the lenders that the projects were completed in order to have that funding go directly to their business bank account. And ultimately, consumer ended up with none of those products. So that is what is happening or has happened to those 164 families. They thought they were getting ADU financing, but unbeknownst to them, they were signing the dotted line for solar financing. And you say to yourself, well, why would Mosaic allow them to get 5 Mosaic solar finance loans? That's what is in question. And our organization has done quite a bit of work in trying to share that with the likes of the regulating bodies within the state. You can go to the next slide. So some of the flags that I'd like for many of you who are listening to this call to pay attention to. When you see a lot of social media, those TikToks, and you hear that there is 12 months no financing for a particular financial vehicle, be cautiously careful. Also, do campaigns out there to make sure consumers are aware when they are signing on DocuSigns that it's actually their email address that's reflective and not an email address that's fabricated. If in the event they don't get confirmation, a fail-safe is as they sign or execute each one of those documents, they could easily just take out their phone and make photo or pictures of what they're signing or clicking through. And then again, we just have to go after, and when we hear about certain things with regards to companies providing misleading tactics, it's important to let the regulating bodies in your state and cities know. We have become an actual resource to not only the Contractors License Board, but also the Department of Financial Protections Innovation, who provides the licensure for Mosaic and Dividend, et cetera. And so we as counselors out here in these states and cities are, many of the regulatory bodies' best ally, because we're seeing everything firsthand. And when you start to see repeat activity, you need to make sure that you present it and get it out there and try to follow up. Next slide, please. Other legal actions that were taking place, we figured out a formula in order to ensure that consumers were able to file the necessary police reports, because you wouldn't believe how many of those 164 families were not able to even file the initial police report. So we figured out what the penal codes were, and they basically are synonymous not only in our state, but in other states, because we've shared with other cities some of the details, and it actually works. So we had to figure out what actual penal codes consumers could actually file in order to get their police reports filed, as well as doing the appropriate FBI filing. We also uncovered within our state Contractors License Board licensure, there is some challenges. When you have a magnitude of 165 families, you would think that immediately those licensures for their contracting license would be immediately revoked. And unfortunately, that's not the case. There is a lot of checks and balances that must occur, and it's lengthy turn time. So when you do see these type of tactics occur, you definitely want to get in contact with your contractor's license board immediately, and you want to keep pressing the issue. Many contractors' license boards have committees or board members. You really want to get in front of the board members so that you can ensure that there is a little bit expedited process in getting those licenses canceled. Other areas that we have also made headway is with this particular company, we've been able to get it from the district attorney to the actual attorney general's office for the state. So we've had those successes, but it has been very challenging because not only the phone calls coming in from 165 families, you know, who are at a loss because basically they're held accountable from anywhere for $300,000 to $350,000 worth of financing that's attached to their personal credit, not their mortgages. They're at, you know, at a high level of stress. And then you're trying to figure out and navigate some of the bureaucratic pieces within your state. So if you do need assistance, our agency can help you. Next slide, please. Other proposed solutions that we've come up with, and we are looking to have bills written, and we have been speaking with Contractors License Board as well as Department of Finance, is making sure that organizations like ourselves have a one-spot location to talk to someone. We don't have to go through the normal channels. So that is some things that are going to be implemented in our state. Another piece that we definitely suggest, and that's just from our wonderful opportunity of being able to help 3,000 families build ADUs, is we offer a managed or performance fund, which is our company's program, where when a consumer is looking to build any sort of construction, they basically, you know, find a contractor, they vet them, and then they would marry it with a performance fund company like ours, where we do the additional vetting and then make sure that when phases of projects are completed, that is when checks are cut and money is released. So we're looking to see if that is a way that the state can, in fact, make some improvement with the construction process as a whole. Obviously, things like that are going to be met with some dismay by some of the licensed contractors, but there definitely needs to be some checks and balances put in place, and we're looking to find some viable solutions for that. Other areas that we're looking to have updates done within our state particularly, when it comes to ADUs, ADUs are shown as home improvement instead of as new construction. And for many of you, if you do or do not know, a lot of ADUs being built are actually new construction and not home improvement. If you're able to change that languaging in the bill type, that would eliminate the players, the scammers out there to be able to couple with these home improvement or solar loans and be able to pull the funding out. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what HPP Cares has been doing with the state, what we've uncovered, and there are so many other offenders out there that are doing this. But we just want to make sure all of you are aware of what's happening from a group that's actually boots on the ground that's doing the work. Next slide, that'll just show our contact information. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you're more than welcome to send over an email. And again, thank you again for this opportunity to share the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Catherine. That was great information. And I'm going to let everybody know that I reached out to our membership and said, are you seeing these things in your area? I got, you know, an immediate response from Catherine, and I got a response from our next presenter as well. But I will say I've also got responses from people who said, we aren't seeing any of this. Now, I think that it is important to note at this point that even though you're not seeing it right now, I think you're going to see it. And it also doesn't mean it's not happening. You may end up starting to see it after people have already been taken advantage of. So one of the things to be thinking about in all of this is how to do maybe some proactive outreach to your constituency about these potential scams and how to avoid them. And with that, this is a perfect segue to Adalis Ramos, the Resource Development Specialist and LCP Program Manager at Centro de Apoyo Familiar. And they are providing services in kind of the general Northeast area, and they are just beginning to see some of these scams and have just started talking about how they want to address it proactively. So we invited them on to talk about what they're doing. So Adalis, please take the reins.
Thank you so much, Ali. As Ali said, my name is Adalis Ramos, and I work for Centro de Apoyo Familiar, or Center for Assistance to Families. And we are here as a nonprofit multi-state organization that has been seeing a lot of solar scams rising. And we kind of want to talk about what we're doing as a multi-state organization in regards to these solar scams and advocating for our consumers. Next slide. So just a little bit of information about Centro de Apoyo Familiar, or CAF. CAF is dedicated to transforming communities through economic, social, and educational empowerment in collaboration with community and faith-based organizations. As I said, we are a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, and CAF has a wide array of free educational workshops and housing counseling service, such as pre-purchase, foreclosure prevention, rental assistance, guidance. And so we were founded in 2006 in the state of Massachusetts, and we were able to expand into other states such as Maryland, Virginia, DC. And as of this year, we are starting our work in Puerto Rico. And every year we're able to serve 25,000 low-income families through our asset building services, along with other services that we will be showing on the next slide. So here we have just some of the many things that we do in CAF, such as our pre-purchase counseling and education, foreclosure prevention, financial literacy, rental counseling and financial assistance programs, credit rebuilding, and a lot of other asset building programs that we have. Along with that, we have our Consumer Protection Office, where I manage, and we work alongside the Attorney General of Massachusetts to be able to assist consumer complaints. We also do food distribution for low-income families, and we do that around on a weekly basis. And we also have health fairs and workforce development and community organizing that we do in all of the states that we serve. Next slide. And so, like I said, we're going to speak quickly about the solar scam trends that we have been seeing, what has been very frequent in our complaints and our conversations with homeowners, and our most affected populations. Next slide. So, obviously, predatory sales practices. Solar companies, what we've been seeing is that they're stationing tables at stores such as Home Depot, Lowe's, other home improvement stores, and just targeting homeowners, especially elderly people who they're probably not technologically savvy, or they don't understand all of the lingo that comes with solar. And they're having, they're selling this dream to them that they're going to, have zero costs in regards to their electric bill. And I mean, we all want to save money. We all have our finances that we have to take into account when we make decisions. And so a lot of people in these stores, they're becoming targets for these predatory practices. And in the store, they're kind of in a rush. They're interested in hearing more. They sign something, and then next thing they know, they're stuck in a contract to get some solar panels installed in their homes. Another way is obviously door-to-door sales pitches, the aggressive, we're going to save money, you're going to save money, sign here. And they get these people, stuck in these contracts. We do have someone actually in one of our offices that their parents accidentally signed a contract for some solar panels. And if it wasn't for her quick intervention, they would have, been stuck with these panels and God knows what fees and other things that they would have to pay for, loans. But they were actually able to cancel it quickly, which was really nice. And unfortunately, not everyone has that opportunity, but that's why we're here, to be able to advocate for them. Next slide. A lot of empty promises is what we're also seeing. Like I said, they're promising you're going to have no electric bill. You're going to be able to solely live off of what is produced by the solar panel. And you know, like I said, that sounds very good to us, especially in the different economic situations that these consumers find themselves in. They are probably desperate for a solution to their high bills and their different financial situations. And so these are promises that can't be kept. You know, they cannot guarantee you 100% free solar, free electricity. No. Solar panels can generate free and sustainable energy, but it doesn't mean that you're going to live 100% free of that bill. Next slide. Also, unclear contract terms and hidden fees. So in regards to this, you know, you're already getting tied down to the cost of having to install the solar and having to do all these, you know, sign all these papers, the loan, and all those different components. But there's other things that need to get done, or certain requirements that you will need in order to get those solar panels. And so we're going to see that on the upcoming slide. So one of the things that were mentioned earlier was the dealer fees. These are fees that go directly to the pocket of the person who is selling you the solar. And so it's not actually going towards the panels, it's going towards the seller. Another thing is that your roof has to be in a certain condition for them to put in these solar panels. And if your roof is not in tip-top condition, you're going to have to incorporate the cost of having to fix your roofing in order for them to actually install. And that's a cost that you probably weren't calculating when you were thinking about getting solar. Another thing is that if your electric system is too weak or old, you'll need to upgrade and change your electric panel, which that is another additional cost that maybe isn't directly associated with the solar panels themselves or the loan, but it is a cost that, you know, consumers have to calculate when they're getting solar panels that they probably didn't think they would need to calculate into the costs. Next slide. Next is sales and marketing, labor, overhead, you know, permitting, supply chain. All this makes up around 65% of the total cost of the installation. And so only 35% is actually being used for your solar panels. And so like they said earlier in another presentations, you definitely should ask for the cost if you were to pay cash. It is drastically lower, and it gives you an idea of really where your money is going to. And then once you sign the contract, it is impossible, almost impossible to cancel. So before signing, revise the contract is what we always tell our consumers. It is important that you weigh the options, do your research. You know, is this a reliable solar company? Am I sure I want to do this? Am I really going to be saving money? And calculate the costs and see if it outweighs the you know, the current situation that the consumer finds themselves in. Next slide. And so language barriers is obviously another huge problem that we're seeing. A lot of non-English proficient populations or minority populations, they fall victim to these scams because they are misunderstanding maybe the policies, or maybe the person is going so fast and just switching screens and going back and forth and having them sign that they just feel so much pressure that they just sign into it and don't calculate or think about what they're actually doing. Confusion, you know, they're throwing all this information at the person, telling them they're going to save money and that this is going to change their financial situation and that this is going to be the best thing for them and their family. And in the midst of all that information, scrolling back and forth, it can cause a lot of confusion. It's a lot of commotion in that moment that causes people to melt under pressure and to sign. And then the contracts also being in English if the person's non-English proficient. So if it's in English, but the consumer speaks Spanish, it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to understand what they are signing. Also, another language barrier that is on the screen is understanding the lingo of, you know, solar contracts, understanding exactly what everything means. And usually when they're trying to sell it to you, they're not taking time to explain all of the technical language to you. They're just trying to get you to sign and go and make a quick buck. Next slide. And so electric bill inaccuracies is something we've been seeing a lot in our consumer complaints. In Massachusetts, for example, when you have solar, you can get your solar credits applied to your electric bill to lower the cost, so that you're able to pay for the electricity that is being consumed through the electric supplier, through net metering. So if you have leftover solar that's not being used, they give you that credit to lower your bill. And so there's you can do that through individual solar and community solar. Community solar is essentially a plot of land where they'll put some solar panels, and if you want some of the solar energy, you would pay a monthly due or a monthly subscription to the solar panel area, to that the owner of the land, or so on and so forth, and that you would get a credit on your electric bill as a person who has the solar panels on their house. What we're seeing is that a lot of solar providers are not communicating with the electric provider, and so people are kind of receiving just it's the same bills. And when ultimately they signed up to receive solar from their community solar panels or from their own home, and that disconnect in the conversation has led to people seeing their bills the same or higher. And so those are some things that we've been seeing in the community also, not just individual, but on a community basis. Next slide. And so as a multi-state organization that works with consumer advocacy and with housing, we have developed a few ideas on how we plan on responding to these efforts. And we really want to motivate other HUD counseling agencies to do the same. Next slide. So CAF has very strong ties with community and faith-based organizations in the communities that we serve, alongside local and state government. We have a coalition of community and faith-based organizations that we use to be able to reach hard to reach communities within our states. And so we plan on leveraging these connections to further our reach by sharing key solar scam prevention information. Also, through our consumer protection program, in collaboration with the Massachusetts Attorney General, use our relationship to be able to report trends that we see in our communities, to be able to advocate for legal repercussions for these solar companies that are just scamming our communities and our stakeholders. And so CAF is currently working on implementing a solar and home improvement workshop for future and current home buyers, so that they can make informed decisions in regards to their homes and not fall for these predatory practices. A lot of times people fall for these scams because they have no idea that these are actually scams. They think it sounds like the most beautiful thing, and they fall for it without having the proper knowledge or awareness of what's going on behind all of the signings and all the information being thrown at them. Next slide. And also social media, using the power of social media to run campaigns and to bring awareness to this problem is definitely going to be key. We live in a very electric, internet-based society. If we want to know if something's good or not, we're going to go online and we're going to look up the reviews on Google, on Yelp, on the BBB, and so on and so forth, in order to see if that's something we want to do. And so we're encouraging people to put their experiences online whenever they do have a negative experience, and that we're also able to publish these posts and social media campaigns along with our partners and collaboration with them, to be able to educate our community about these situations. And so on the next slide, I have my contact information, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions, concerns. And so I thank you so much for listening and for your attention.
Thanks so much, Adalis. We do have some questions, but before we get to those, I'm going to take the facilitator privilege to make a couple of comments. So first of all, I just want to say, if people didn't notice it in the chat, Brenda Giancaspro, a HECM counselor, notes that she often sees the solar panel liens when she does an intake for HECM counseling. So senior citizens being targeted seems to be a pretty common theme here today. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that we at NHRC are trying to gather information from housing counselors that are interested in learning more about how to educate their clients around all of these different rebates and tax incentives and programs that are coming open, the Solar for All, the home energy rebates, all these things, to learn about being a home energy advisor. And Christy has popped into the chat a link to a document that you can give your information if you are interested in participating in a training that we are working to develop for housing counselors who are interested in having the ability to kind of provide this home energy advisor support to their consumers. So again, it's in the chat. Take a peek.
Ellie, could I just jump in on one quick thing?
Sure, go ahead.
So the other issue I'd just like to say is that there are some good solar installers, that this is an important part of our future. One of the aspects that we're working with some of the solar groups is to how to vet contractors and just try to give people the tools. But there's a lot of good work being done out there as well, and so there's really potential partnerships. Don't want this to end up being a kind of bashing solar world, because we think there's a lot of value in the future there.
Good point. Okay, so I do have one question that comes from us at NHRC. So Annalise, could you explain a little bit more about what a UCC lien is?
Sure. So a UCC lien is a lien on property. It's kind of like it's also been called like mechanics lien. So let's say you have, you don't pay a bill, or you have a big bill, it's going to go onto that piece of property. So it's a way to securitize and to make the lender feel comfortable that because they're lending you so much money, that their investment's going to be paid, and that it allows them essentially with this lien to, if you stop paying, to take it back. So it's like same thing as like, you can repossess a car. It's the same kind of concept. Now, how they do that, what exactly happens, all those kind of nitty-gritty, it's going to be case by case. But essentially every lender is going to have a UCC lien for the panels. The issue that comes in is it for the panels or is it for the house? Because it's for the house, your ability to get a mortgage or like a refi or anything becomes nil, because again, Freddie and Fannie, unless they're going to keep this mortgage on the bank's books, Freddie and Fannie are required to have first priority. And if you have a PACE loan, which it can be a solar loan, that takes first priority because it's connected to your taxes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first question, and Annalise, I believe that this question is for you. Is this loan credit score driven, and will it be a lien on the home? I think you kind of just answered the whole lien on the home issue, but the credit score driven part.
So that's one of the problems right now. So now with the PACE loan, we're waiting on, and hopefully it will come out in the new year, but again, it's a new administration, so we don't know. The CFPB is supposed to be putting out a rulemaking around PACE loans that the financer has to make sure that the borrower has the ability to pay it back. Because initially for PACE loans, they're based upon the equity in the home. And so therefore they were going after older borrowers who have paid off their mortgages, but they were going to people who are on a fixed income and expecting them to be able to pay it. And instead they're losing their homes. In terms of ability to pay, it should always be that, but they're not doing that. They kind of look at your credit score. And again, this information is, in terms of business model, is being looked at when they securitize these loans, like Goodleap and Mosaic and securitized loans. Then there is a report by Fitch that looks at it and talks about the business model. And then there, it talks about the idea that most people have a higher credit score. So like a 760, a 740. And those are the people that are kind of looking to use as consumers, as customers, and they're using those people for it. So they're not really looking at your ability to pay, and they're not really looking at your ability to afford this. They're really just looking at credit scores, and sometimes even say that if you're like a 760, they don't care if you can pay or not.
Okay, so this person asks, makes me wonder if this sales tactic is also applied to other energy efficient appliances that are eligible for tax credit under the Inflation Reduction Act. Has anybody seen any of that?
So yes, there is a certain amount. It's like another 30% for like a thermal, if you like do thermal energy, to heating. And there's certain amounts, the Inflation Reduction Act does have certain amounts that you can do as a tax credit. And you can get more than one in a year, depending, as long as it's a new part or new product kind of thing. But yeah, look into the Inflation Reduction Act because there's some stuff.
Well, I think, yeah, I can just chime in too. I think, yes. So we are seeing lenders that predominantly did solar before moving into different green energy products. So we have heat pumps, even like weatherization type things where it's sort of like a whole house recalking, right? Kind of like make the house leak less, add some insulation, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, and it makes sense if there's this federal stimulus, which I think in a lot of ways, or a federal subsidy, which in a lot of ways makes good sense. You're going to see good, as Bruce said, good folks come in and try to help consumers take advantage of that, but also scammers who come in and realize that it gives them an entryway. And so, yes, we're seeing this. I mean, solar, I think, is the vast majority of these types of loans and predatory behavior, but you see it with other green energy products as well.
So somebody just commented it all sounds like an episode of American Greed. Yeah. How do homeowners get the unapplied solar credits to be applied to their bill?
So that's where it's different. Solar is different than electric vehicles. In electric vehicles, the credit is done immediately as at the point of sale, and then if you don't qualify for it, you owe the IRS that money back. That's $7,500 because it's just a specific number. For this, you actually have to apply when you file your taxes and fill out another form with the IRS. And that causes its own issues because not everybody at the IRS is educated on how to do this form. And there's been some like news stories about that too. But it is done not at the point of sale. It is done later, which is why at the point of sale, they do the interest only payments for the structured finance so that there is supposedly time to get it, the tax credit, and then be able to give them that lump sum.
Okay. So this person asked about a specific state or an area, but I guess it applies to the whole country. Is there a list of reputable solar companies that can be accessed?
Not that we know of an actual list. It's a little bit like you have to do your own research or look at the Better Business Bureau. Talk to friends.
I will add to that National Housing Law Project and the National Consumer Law Center do have some information, and we'll try to get the link out to their recommendations. And Bruce just came on. So Bruce, did you have something to add to that?
Well, yeah, Solar United Neighbors clearly is thinking about these questions and maybe a resource, and not everywhere, but in some places they do installation themselves, but also work with others. And they're in, I forgot what it was, a number of states around the country. And there is a pretty good nonprofit network, so they may be a good source of information to either they do it themselves or they have contractors they work with.
Also, can I just add a different kind of like a similar point on this? Also, as a housing counselor, also work with your clients to be able to braid in the different and layer the different type of incentives. So we know there's a 30% federal, but different states, even different counties will also have tax exemptions or potential like that are non-refundable tax exemptions potentially, and to be able to use as many of those and put them together is really helpful to really try and lower the price.
Okay. Who do we reach out to if we have a client who was scammed by solar, meaning they got the panels but are not set up? And is that state specific?
It's both state and federal. You can go to the CFPB because I'm assuming at the moment the client is still paying a bill for those panels that are not working while taking out energy. And under the holder rule, the CFPB can have effect. You can also file the FTC, but I would really file for the panel, I'd file like an FTC for the installer complaint, and I'd file a CFPB complaint on the lender because they should be holding the installer responsible. And you can also, file with your own state agencies.
Right. I think state consumer protection agencies, and also, it sounds like this is a situation where the installer is not doing the work, so a state contractors board or something like that, that regulates construction companies.
And I did, by the way, pop into the chat a little bit earlier, licensing information for contractors from the National Association of State Contractors Licensing Agencies. So a very general website, but you might be able to find more specific by going there and looking at your specific state. And the other thing about the CFPB, I just want to remind people, it is so important to file those complaints on lenders with CFPB. The one issue I want to remind everybody is it does not mean you get immediate relief for your consumer, but it does mean that you're giving CFPB the fodder for future supervision and enforcement with lenders that are acting poorly.
At least 100% correct. The more you can notify the CFPB, and the law you'd be citing would be ECOA for discrimination if you think you're seeing a fair lending discrimination, or just they're not following access to credit issues.
So for our renters, we are seeing more of the community solars, which I worry could indicate scams. Are there resources for renters on what to look out for with community solar?
NCLC has done a great report on community solar, and I would look there and see what they've said. And they've also put out like a best practices.
And this person is from New York, and I live in New York, and I joined a community solar farm. And I will say there are a lot of entities in New York State that are offering the option to participate in community solar. And I think the key thing is that you make sure that you are looking at a community solar program and comparing and contrasting the amount that you can get back from your participation in the community solar farm. Let's see. I've noticed that some real estate agents are also solar reps. Can they be held liable for getting the homeowner into a bad deal?
Andrew, I mean, I don't see.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. And I assume, most states, so in California, you're licensed as a real estate agent, and you have to be a licensed solar salesperson with the state contractors board. So that, I assume this is an example where a person has both license, they kind of do both things. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's conflict of interest issues there. But it's a good question, and frankly, not something I'm super familiar with, but is an interesting thing to look into.
And I just popped that community solar report that Annalise mentioned from NCLC into the chat. So that is the end of our solar questions, but there is a question that came from your discussion, Bruce, at the beginning of our session. With the new administration coming in January, should we as an industry be worried about the CFPB going away? What about the affirmatively furthering fair housing rules?
Well, others could chime in on this as well. I mean, I don't know for sure, but this is a very much a deregulating administration that's coming in, and there's a real interest in that in the in Congress as well on the Republican side. And there aren't very many checks and balances on this. The previous Trump administration did not do away with the CFPB, but they did clip its wings or limit what it was doing and narrowed its mandate substantially.
You mean the previous Trump administration, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. And the and there's a lot of talk about walking back a number of government institutions. So, I mean, I think there is a risk there, and I mean, I don't. I don't know what protections can be put in place. I don't know more than that. But I think it's a real worry. And if you're using tools in the CFPB, it would be worth downloading them. I don't know, LA, if you want to have more to say about that.
Well, we did see at the beginning of the previous Trump administration that many of the federal agencies took down public documents that we were all accessing. So if there are public documents at any of the federal organizations that you use regularly, you should download them just in case. And that's the end of our questions.
So let's shift into a quick touching base on, would love to make sure that everybody is doing your organizations are members of NHRC. This is what gives us the flexibility to do the work we do and do the lobbying. To be honest, there isn't a great deal of money these days out there for a lot of the advocacy work we do. And this keeps us independent and allows us to keep your voice in the front of our work. Many of you are working with us routinely. We will continue to do things to attract new programming, new opportunities, new funding opportunities, new innovations. But it needs your support to keep going. We do have some, as we've said, we've got a number of discounts that are helpful to you. Credit report discount is particularly good one. Project Own is very new, but we think for some organizations, this may streamline your intake in dramatic ways and may be worth it to you. And there's so we have a discount for that, and we also have a few trials that will actually that are still available, but only for members that are paid up. And but we have others as well. You can see them on the list. And but the real reason to do this is to support the work and keep us going. I'm very pleased to say that we've had a surge in membership and in new renewals, and that's helpful. But we're not anywhere near. I guess we're maybe close to 10% of the housing counseling world, or that's probably optimistic at this moment. But we're getting close there, and I would really, to the extent that we could really dramatically increase that, it would give us the flexibility to continue doing work that badly needs to get done. We do some extra benefits to the members. We do making sure to try to get invited to key meetings when it's possible. We also are doing, we do send out notices about unusual funding opportunities that not everybody may know about, that maybe housing counseling agencies don't always access, but we are eligible to. So we do want to benefit members in any way we can, but still be a resource for the entire housing counseling community. So we are planning lots of big things in the upcoming year for the leaders webinars. AmeriCorps stuff, I think we're underusing it. These are staff members for much less than a regular staff member would come in. The people who have been hired, some of them appear to be quite motivated and end up being full-time staffers in your organization after their tour of duty with AmeriCorps. This seems to be a great resource, and it's done by Housing Action Illinois. They are beloved by the AmeriCorps bureaucracy, which is notoriously hard to navigate. So this is a really good opportunity, and please join us December 5th. And I think the application process finishes up in January, so that we can get more groups in. But it's available nationally. Please dive in. Student Debt Services Support Group is another innovative group working on student loans, and I think if there's a move to end the Department of Education, which is one of the things they've talked about, this will become much more complicated. So we can use all the help we can get. The Solar 101, I believe, is the Solar United people, and is a Solar United Neighbors, and they are really state of the art, very, very good. This is an area where we need to become a lot more familiar with. This is the plus side. This is the non-scam side. So, definitely please be in touch on that. And then Smart Home America. I don't know how much we've talked about this. It's a very impressive organization. And what they're doing is making homes storm resilient. They're a nonprofit. They have some very interesting videos about what happens in a windstorm to your roof. It's pretty dramatic, and but they are deeply knowledgeable. They do know about, and we'll talk about resources in some states that will pay people for either reinforced roof, or for some for other kinds of storm protections. These are resources you need to know about for your clients, actually for yourselves as well, if you're in those states. So there'll be a lot there. We're very, very excited about it, and we'll promote it as we go along. There'll be plenty more. Ellie and Ebony and Christy and Miss Ivy and occasionally me, we're all working on trying to get more of these webinars in the cycle. We are still doing we're still working on the Home Energy Advisor. We're really working on Section 8. We're doing a fair amount around trying to broaden the work of lenders in the field, so that our people still continue to have opportunities. There's a lot more we'll be doing in the near term future. So please stay involved, stay tuned. Remember, you're part of a community here, and certainly please have your organization join NHRC. With that, let's close it up. Thank you, everybody, including our presenters.